Thinking about buying a franchise? Don't go it alone. Just like a buyer's agent in real estate, you deserve someone who's on your side every step of the way. That's where Todd Abraham, the franchise guy, comes in. Todd's consulting services are completely free to anyone looking to buy a franchise. He'll represent your interest, make sure all your questions are answered, and walk you through the entire buying process. With Todd in your corner, you'll have the best chance for success from your first call to the day you hold the keys to your new business. So before you buy a franchise, talk to someone who knows the industry inside and out and works for you. Call Todd Abraham, the franchise guy, today at 423-381-0925 for a free, no-pressure consultation. That's 423-381-0925. Your future in franchising starts here.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Franchise Flashlight Podcast series. My name is Todd Abraham, and today we are blessed to have a very positive countenanced individual. I don't even know that's a word. Joleen, let me say your last name right. Tietz?
It is Tietz. Yep. Yeah.
Tietz.
German last name.
Tietz. And so Joleen has got a service near and dear to our heart. It's called InHomeCare4U. And the actual, if you want to look at the website while we're talking this over, it is InHomeCare, the number 4 and the letter U.com. And Joleen has built a brand around what is not a typical way to spell a company name or a website. But Joleen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for what we're doing with our brand. It's really massive compared to what we started with. You know, we started this in small town North Idaho. So the thought of franchising it was the furthest thing from our mind when we first began. And so we're just at a really exciting time right now as we are breaking into this new space and expanding across the nation. Is really exciting.
Yeah, it is so funny because when Joleen and I first met by phone, I was trying to get in touch with her to do the discovery call about the podcast, and this will tell you how busy she is. So, okay, now what town in Idaho are you in again?
We're up in Deary, Idaho.
Okay, so my son lives in Burley, Idaho. And so in my text message to her, I said, I told her who I was, and I told her that, and I'm a franchise consultant with FMS, which is the company that created the franchise for InHomeCare4U. And I was just trying to relate to her. And she texted me back and she goes, well, we're not currently providing any service in Cassia County. I just died laughing. I said, this is a busy woman. So, Jolene, what is the website for the franchise information?
So it's the same website. So it's just InHomeCare4U. And then there's a franchise opportunities page on that website that people can go to and see more information.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It's in the navigation link at the top.
Yeah.
And so give us a brief background about how this started, because I know you and I talked about it, but it was a great story and I definitely want the listeners to hear it too.
Sure. Yeah, it is a great story. If somebody wanted to create a great story around a company, this story would probably be it, to be honest with you. It just kind of organically came about. My dad was being in home care services, and he was living in Boise at the time, and he had a home caregiver in Boise. It was kind of a nightmare situation where that person ended up taking advantage of him, and it's every family member's first worst nightmare to experience. Somebody's trusted to come into your home and then they take advantage of you. And so we actually kind of had to come to the rescue, relocated him, ended up bringing him up closer to where my husband and I lived, because even though he was in Idaho, Boise and northern Idaho where I live, it was still a 7-hour drive to get there. So he might as well have been still living in California at that point. Anyhow, he chose to relocate, come back up here where my husband and I are located, and I took care of him on my own for a long time. And after almost about, I don't know, 6 to 8 months of me caring for him regularly, every day after school, I would go to his house and take care of him. He was like, I'd really rather take a shower in the mornings. Can you just be here at 9? And I was working at the school at the time. So I couldn't do that. And I told him, I said, well, there's a classroom full of kids that need me here and I'm committed for the school year, but if you really want somebody to come, we could look at hiring someone for you. And so I was like, do we try for another agency? Called a few places. They didn't call us back. And we're just kind of like, gosh, I don't know if we want to go that route again. And we didn't want to hire somebody under the table because the liability involved in that, they could slip on the ice outside of his home. They could slip and twist their back, putting him in and out of the shower. We wanted to make sure that we had a legitimate company with liability insurance, workman's compensation, all that good stuff in case somebody got hurt. We wanted that layer of protection. We didn't want to put his finances or his house at risk by having someone come into the home. So anyways, it was just kind of born out of a necessity for that liability protection. And so we went to the Secretary of State, figured out how to start a business. This wasn't like this big master plan to build this conglomerate, home care business. But
Yeah, but a funny thing real quick though, the funny thing you and I talked about on the phone call when your dad was like, "Hey, can you just be here at 9 in the morning?" And I was like, "Yeah." You was like, "You just tell your dad, say, yeah, me and a classroom full of elementary kids will be here to make sure that you get in the shower on time, Dad."
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just couldn't do it at that point, and so we did end up hiring someone for him. And the crazy thing was the need in our area is so apparent because we were not advertising. I think another thing we talked about when we had that first call together was the fact that when we started this, our system was a clipboard with a piece of paper. What time did you get
Right.
here? What time did you leave? What did you do while you were here? What's your name? And that was it. That's how technical we were at the time.
Flintstones.
Yeah, it
Yes.
feels like that. Yeah.
Chip your name on the stone here.
Yeah, exactly. And
That's
so
right.
we've gone through several iterations since then and evolved, of course, as time has gone by. But those
What
early,
year did you start in
we
home care
started
for
in
you?
2018.
In 18. And then
Mhm.
what, yeah, the thing you told me was you just started having people you knew ask you, "Hey, can you come by and check on my mom? Can you go by and check on my dad, check on my grandmother?" And then it just kind of blossomed from there, right?
Yeah, we were not even advertising when we got our first handful of clients, which really tells you how much need there is for these services in our time. And it makes sense. Everybody knows about the baby boomers and the silver wave. People call it the silver tsunami is here. The baby boomers are starting to retire. They're all, I think, what is it? By 2030, which is in just 4 years, all the baby boomers will be 65 years and older. Of course, not every 65-year-old is going to need home care services. So this industry is going to continue to boom for the next 10, 15, 20, even possibly 30 years of this
Yeah,
industry
if you
increasing.
look on their website, on the franchise information, again, the main website is InHomeCare, the number 4, the letter U.com, and then the franchise link is at the top in the navigation menu. But I love what she's got here. She's got a graphic here that says InHomeCare4U, but it says the silver tsunami is here. Are you ready for the senior boom? And Jolene, where I live in Athens, Tennessee, so we're in Southeast Tennessee, about dead center between Knoxville and Chattanooga. It's like 70% retired people here. And I love senior citizens, always have since I can remember. But I've even prayed, asked the Lord, I said, "Lord, can we get just a little bit better mix here? Some more young folks in here." Because I mean, anywhere you go in public care, and so your franchise for somebody here in this area would do phenomenal because it's just, again, like 70% retired people.
Yep. Yeah. And it's going to continue to grow. For the first time in our nation's history, seniors are going to outnumber children, which
Hmm.
is a staggering statistic. But when you look at the demographics and you look, you kind of get these hourglass type bulges when you look at the demographics of the populations and you see that baby boomer generation, and it just is the largest generation of, United States population. And so as they have grown, the industry successes that we've seen, the huge successes that we've seen have followed the baby boomers. I think you and I talked about this before too, is that we had a big boom with Gerber when all the baby boomers were born, and then
Right.
it went into Mattel, and you had Hot Wheels and Barbie, and that was just exploding. And then you had, they all turned into teenagers, and the car industry really took off, and then the housing industry took off. And so now is the time for senior care to really take off, and in-home care in particular, because as you survey people, you're finding more and more people that would choose not to go into a facility. Some people have to be for financial reasons, but when they have the choice, they really want to stay at home, which makes sense. You build your life and your things, and that's where you want to be.
Well, and not only that, but given the familiarity of the surroundings, but the cost of these assisted living homes in different places, nursing homes, has gone through the ceiling. I mean, they're running $2,500 to $5,000 a month or higher, and it's big business. And
Yeah.
so tell us about how your business has grown, but that's and also explain the uniqueness, because there's a lot of home care companies out there. But based on my conversation with you, and I do have a decent knowledge of in-home care and kind of how it works, but something about your system is unique. Tell us about that.
Well, we're very caregiver first oriented. I've seen firsthand what burnout can do to people. And so with the baby boomers all retiring, you're seeing it everywhere. You go to a gas station, you go to a restaurant, everybody has a now hiring sign in their window. So our focus really is on how do we retain and take care of those caregivers? How do we let them know that they matter? How do we attract people who want to find not just a job, but a career that really helps them to make a difference in other people's lives? And you really want to find that person, because burnout is a real thing in the caregiving world, and you don't want to have that happen. I have caregivers come to me from other agencies, and they're saying, I wish more agencies got it. I wish more agencies did things like you, but when somebody needs a day off, we're not going to shame them into not taking that day off for themselves. Everybody has their own lives too. And to make somebody fearful about asking for time that they need, we're very much understand that you need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help someone else. And as a caregiver, all too often, we don't do that for ourselves. There's family caregivers all over the place that are burning out in troves because they're picking up the slack, and other family members are like, oh, well, they're okay. They're taking mom to their doctor's appointment, and they don't realize this slow increase, because it usually doesn't always hit you all at once. Sometimes it does, because grandma breaks a hip, right? Grandma breaks a hip, and it's like, she was doing fine one day, and boom, the very next day she needs a bunch of care. But all too often it's incremental changes where it's just slowly creeps in, and it's just first starts out with a couple rides to appointments, and then it's, hey, I need you to, I can't bend over anymore to feed my cat. Okay, well, if that cat is a companion for you, that is an every single day job that needs to happen that you're no longer able to do. If it's not safe for you to clean the litter box anymore, then somebody needs to be there to do it. And if it's going to be your family member every single day, that might be okay if they live next door. But if they don't live next door, you might need somebody else to come in to help with those things. And as a private pay agency, we are able to help with things like pet care. So we can take your pet for a walk, we can pick up after your pet, we can take them to the vet, where with a lot of other agencies out there that are strictly Medicaid, Medicare, they're actually prohibited from doing those types of things for people. And so we've built a model that's primarily VA, private pay, and long-term care insurance. And with our private pay clients, we have a lot of flexibility with what we can do for people. When you start to get into state insurance, long-term care insurances, everybody's policy is different. VA is very stringent, like you can't drive to appointments, but we can help them set up those rides. And so it's just kind of navigating what services we can offer to who. But we are very much, understanding that these people need to be able to still have a quality of life. And so often what you find with aged individuals who start needing care is that depending on what support they have, their quality of life is at a very high risk of dropping down. So it's finding those people who are aligned with the mission to make these people's lives as good as they can be while they're still with us, because they deserve that dignity and that respect.
And there's something else that I loved about your system. Tell us about the work from home part of it, because you've got that down to a science, but only you can explain that really the best.
Sure. So this is very clearly an office, right? But I am actually coming to you from my home office today. We do have a location in Moscow that we have, but we've only had that location for a year. So for the first, well, I mean, we've been in business since 2018. So for the first 6, 7 years of our business, we didn't have that Moscow location, and our base of operations was just right out of my home, because most people who need our services, we're going to them anyways. And so having the overhead of an office space didn't seem necessary to me to start. Now, if a franchisee comes in and they really want to have an office space of their own, that is fine, and that we're not going to discourage someone from taking that route. But if somebody wants to start this from the comfort of their own home, as long as they have a dedicated space that they can put, if they're going to have physical files, today's day and age, we can have digital files. So as long as those are HIPAA protected, we can do that. I'm kind of the mindset I like to have both, just in case something happens. I want to make sure that I have both. So as long as you have that locking filing cabinet, you can kind of see mine here in the background. As long as you have something that you can keep sensitive information for employees and for clients locked up, you can do this business from home. And so us being able to have that flexibility really broadens who we're able to sell this franchise to, because it's not just the business minded person who goes, oh, home care is about to take off, this is what we want to get into because we know this is where the money's going to be. But it's also that person who's been, maybe they're a retired nurse, or they've been a CNA for years and they've been in a facility and they just don't like how things are going there. They want to have more of a personal touch. That CNA or that nurse can start something, or it could be a family caregiver that starts something, because we really have the business side of it lined out for you, where we could walk you through how to do the business side of it. But we have that flexibility for you to be able to, if you want to start with a brick and mortar, you can. But if you want to start from your home base, you can do that too, because you could really start small as you go. You could start with just a couple of employees that are caregivers and just kind of grow as that need continues to grow. So you can really control how much you're paying people versus how much you have coming in, so that when you start up, you don't have that initial overhead hanging over you, because that can cause some undue stress. If you have a rental payment or a mortgage payment that's due all the time, and you don't have the client base to support that yet, we don't want you to have to go backwards before you can go forward. We want you to be able
Well,
to incrementally grow.
and the advantage too of starting from your home is now you make roughly 20% of your home a tax deductible expense. So
Yeah.
that is another huge advantage. So let's talk about now, before we get into numbers as like cost of the franchise, royalty, all this stuff. Let me just say that from my brief conversation with Joleen on the phone, she is a systems driven oriented woman, and she has been working for years to put systems into place so that when you come on board as a franchisee, there'll be no guessing games. You'll have a system for, I mean, she's got systems for systems based on our conversation, and I love that, because that's what's going to make it easy. And the reason I say that for any of you listening who are interested in buying a franchise with In-Home Care for You, is because maybe you've been in healthcare, but you've never been in this type of healthcare, and maybe you've got some anxiety about, well, what about this, that, and the other. Trust me, she's already got it all figured out. So let's talk about what is the cost of the franchise, what's the monthly royalty, and then once they get signed on board, how long before they'll start generating some revenue?
Sure. So the franchise fee itself is $47,369. And then the royalty, we wanted to make sure that we did something really reasonable. I was just talking to a franchise broker the other day, and she was like, "Oh, thank goodness your royalty fee is reasonable," because she was walking with a company that was asking for like 13% of the royalty fee. So ours is only 5,
Wow.
which is just below the industry standard. I think industry
Which is
standard for most
6%.
people is like 6 or 7.
6%. Yep.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Now, we've already kind of talked about your ideal candidate as far as a franchisee goes, but you want to elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our ideal candidate really, if they have a business background, that's great. Marketing background, that's great. But you don't need that to do what we do because we have so many systems in place and outlines in place to walk you through those things. Of course, having that background is going to give you an edge, but we really can walk anybody through. What we're really looking for is people who have the heart for it. We
Right.
want people who can care for other people because we know that that culture starts at the top and it trickles its way down. And we want our caregivers to feel it because our philosophy at InHomeCare4U is that if we take good care of our caregivers will take good care of our clients. And that's really what we're after is we want to foster an environment that caregivers can be cared for. And that doesn't happen by passing the buck. That happens by real support. And so that real support happens at the franchise level and then at the owner level, then at the manager level, down to the caregivers, and then ultimately the clients are the ones that are reaping the benefits of our culture.
Well,
So
and not only that, but I've said this for years because I'm a very um, inquisitive person when it comes to, well, pretty much everything. But, I've heard it said for years, your customer's the lifeblood of your business. And I agree with that to a point, but I one step further. I said, actually, your employees are your lifeblood of your business because if your employees are happy, your customers are going to be happy. And so, but one thing I want you to talk about, because you've got other things included in that franchise fee that other businesses don't do. So elaborate on that so they'll understand that even though the franchise fee may seem a little high compared to the industry standard, but you've got a lot of built-in things there. So it's like a plug and play and go, right?
yeah, so and actually our franchise fee is also under what for the home care industry is
Right.
just under what many others are doing. And we wanted to do that strategically as well because we didn't want to come in and demand the higher price, even though we have the support structure to support it.
Right.
We have a media team. We're actually think since we talked, we've developed a boot camp where they can actually come to us for a boot camp. And we're really excited about that because we put a lot of thought and organization. Of course, systems oriented. So that's going to be the same for our boot camp. So we put a lot of thought and effort into how we organize that for them to come to us. We have a media team that's going to be here. So owners are going to get to have their first 30-second 60-second videos of their own franchise story because I have a franchise story of why I started InHomeCare4U because my dad, who had MS, who's a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army, is getting taken advantage of. He needed something. We started the company because of this. But every single owner is going to have their own story of why they chose to go into home care, why they chose to invest in our franchise, why they chose to start their own InHomeCare4U location. And we want to give them a platform where they can be able to tell that story. And so having that digital presence from the beginning without having to go straight into your marketing ad spend to develop it right off the bat, we want you to have some strong branded groundwork ready to go, cookie cutter stuff. We also provide you with a website. We've done a ton of work on our website, making sure that we are optimized with Google for SEO, ranking for keywords. So when you're starting an agency with us, you're not starting that website from ground zero. We're going to give you a local page that's your local page specific to you. We can get some geo signaling in there for Google to recognize. They already know that we do home care. So if we can get enough local keywords for you, it'll be able to merge those local geo signals with what we do, which will show up in your area for like caregiver near me. You'll be able to start ranking for those as you put the content into your own website. So we will be able
Well,
to provide that to you.
let's just say that somebody from my area, Athens, Tennessee, buys a franchise with you. So will their website be InHomeCare4U.com/AthensTN, or how will that be?
Yeah, so as long as it's not taken, they have the ability to request what they want that portion to say, because sometimes territories might be just one specific city, but other times a territory might include multiple different cities. Like where I grew up in Southern California, there was Palmdale, Lancaster, Rosemont. They're all different cities, but the area in general was just labeled as the Antelope Valley. So somebody might want to say, Antelope Valley instead of saying Palmdale, because if they say Palmdale, it's going to exclude Lancaster or something like that. So as long as that handle that they choose makes geographical sense, and as long as it's not taken by someone else, then it's just subject to franchise or approval. But yes, it would basically say like we have ours that says in-home care for you, and then it's dash Latah County is the location that we have for our first in-home care for you, and then subsequent locations would be similar.
But now let me just also ask, in that franchise fee too, did you mention something about like a scheduling system and possibly even help with like a billing system that's all included in that as well?
So we do fill your buckets ahead of time. So we have a support system that's available to you. So if you don't have the means to hire a manager right off the bat, or you don't have the means to hire someone to come in and run your payroll for you, we have a payroll specialist here that can assist you. We have a billing specialist here that can assist you, HR, marketing, all of that stuff. So when you have that support, we have compliance officers that can kind of help you through, like, did I check all these boxes off? We have a list so you can follow the list, but sometimes it helps to just have a Q&A with a real person and get some real-time feedback. So we have this support system that is phenomenal. And within your franchise fee, when you very first start with us as a franchise owner, every franchise owner has those buckets already filled so that they're not having to buy those services from day one. Buying into those services is optional. You do not have to, but I can tell you firsthand, having those services available to you, the reason we designed it that way is because I was really designing it in the thought of, what did I need when I was doing this all by myself, before I had any support, before I had the income flowing in to be able to hire people to help me with certain things, and I had to do it all on my own. What could I do? Because I'll just get really personal here for a minute. My dad is no longer with us. He's the reason we started this company, but we lost him in 2021. And while he was in the hospital and the doctors had told us he was dying, my brother had come up here from California. My sister was on her way back from Europe. She was deployed, so we had to get the Red Cross involved to fly her back. She was en route coming. My brother and I were already there, and we knew it was just going to be any moment now that we were going to lose him. And I was at the hospital with my laptop running payroll, and my husband's looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, if I don't do this, we don't have a business. Like, people have to get paid or they're not going to show back up for their shifts. And we have all these other clients that we're taking care of. And it's not just about me. And I have to make sure that they're all getting paid. And nobody else knows how to do this without screwing up. They don't have access to my bank account. They can't pay it. It has to be
Right.
me, And I didn't want anybody else to buy into what we built here and have to be in that same position, And there's been other times where it wasn't so gloom and doom, but I was just, I left our camping trip and drove a half an hour to the next town over where I could go to a Starbucks and connect to their Wi-Fi so I could run payroll. You
That's
really are
awesome.
married
But now you also told me that you have an amazing HR person that your franchisees will also have access to, who is an expert on everything HR. So tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah, Melody is awesome. We're super lucky to have her. Melody and I actually went to high school together. And I've known that she's been in HR for a long time. Her and I both have HR background. And I remembered that she was in HR back when I was doing it. And I reached out to her a little bit over a year ago. And she's been involved with us since. And she's a regular attendee on our Thursday night Zooms. That's something I haven't mentioned yet, is every Thursday night we jump on a Zoom call just like this one. And we are we're not pre-recorded. We're not AI. We're there with you. And we can do question and answer stuff at the end of each one of our trainings, but the trainings are always on a different topic. And Melody is always coming up with amazing things to talk about on those. And they're also open to suggestions. So those don't cost you anything as a franchisee, and any managers that you hire, you guys can come on as just additional support and training that we offer to you on a regular basis. And Melanie's amazing. 25 years of background in HR. She's got her master's in HR, and she's just a plethora of knowledge. And if she doesn't know, she's very good at finding the answer very quickly, very timely. And there can be complex situations, that happen when you have people on board, especially as you get into different states and stuff like that. So having an HR professional that you can bounce things off of is huge, especially when you're very first starting out your business. I don't think a lot of places think to offer things like that. And we wanted to set ourselves apart by doing that.
That's awesome. So we are talking with Joleen Tietz from InHomeCare4U franchise. It's again the website InHomeCare, the number 4, the letter U.com. We're going to take a pause for just a brief second here and let you know that this podcast, Franchise Flashlight Podcast Series on franchiseradio.net, is sponsored by Franchise Marketing Systems. They are the number one choice in America and Canada for creating a very professional franchise model out of your business model that you have worked hard for years to develop. And you will be amazed at how they can interpret your business model, transform it into the most professional franchise. And they do about 11 to 12 different steps, including your federal trademark filing, your franchise disclosure document, your business plan, help you file your federal trademark, create your franchise information website. Just a phenomenal company, diligent, down to earth, with great integrity. And when they get done doing all that, and then you're ready to launch your franchise, they're going to assign you a brand ambassador to help you promote and sell your franchise. And one of the benefits of using them is you're also going to be featured here on the Franchise Flashlight podcast series. But if you are a business owner and you've been considering creating a franchise out of your business, you can contact me, Todd Abraham, at 423-405-4040 for a free, no pressure consultation. And or if you're someone looking to buy a franchise, we also help with that service as well. So, Joleen, you are officially launched as a franchise. What's your vision for the company, and how many locations would you like to see in the next year to 2 years?
So we're really excited. We're going to have our first cohort training this October, and we have another one scheduled for December. So our initial hope is that we can do these quarterly, and they're going to coincide with our existing quarterly trainings. So owners will be able to come and see how we run our quarterly trainings, and then they'll get to practice running one of their own, and we'll get that media stuff handled, and we'll help them get through their onboarding. And really, it's designed to kind of help them. It's kind of like a launch week, and so
Right. That's cool.
they'll come out here for a week, and by the time they leave, they should feel really ready to open their doors. Of course, every state is going to be different, as far as some states require licensing for what we do and others don't. And so you had asked a question earlier about kind of the time frame that it takes someone to launch once they sign their FDD, or once they have their FDD, you review it. You have 14 days to kind of mull it over before you can sign a franchise agreement with us. And then once you sign that franchise agreement, really depends on the person, their tenacity, and how well they want to put their head down. But once we have that quarterly launch, you can come to that prepared and already ready to go, or you could come to that where you just signed your agreement beforehand. And our goal is to make sure that everybody by the end of that week, regardless of where they are in the process, is just raring to go as soon as they get home. But those state to state licenses are what's going to really hold you up. So as far as everything you need to do on our side, if you really want to put your head down, you could get started in just a couple of weeks. The licensing is what's going to hold you up. Those licensing fees and applying for those, depending on the state, could take 4 or 5, sometimes even like California could be 6 months or longer, just depending on how long that takes that state to get through that process, And so checking with.
Just real quick, do you have a list of states that don't require licenses anywhere available?
I don't, it's typically going to be very hand in hand with like the states that require the registrations, and the filings are typically, not always, but
Right, like
typically going
California,
to
New
be the same
York.
state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Typically, yeah, but
Right. Okay.
no, not yet. That is a good idea. It's hard to keep up on a list like that because things change so often.
Right.
So if I gave you a list on that today, it could change by, the end of the year.
But so, and what that tells us is that anybody can qualify to own a franchise with you, but those who already have an existing background, like as an RN, as you said, and are licensed in different forms of, healthcare, they're going to start with a big advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah, because certain states also require your caregivers to go through trainings. And so that's worth mentioning as well. States like Washington will allow you to work as a caregiver, and you have 90 days to complete your caregiving certification that they have everyone go through. And so you can start, but then you only have that 90 days to finish if you want to stay on with that company. Otherwise, there's a hard cutoff for you being able to work any hours. So, unfortunately, in Washington, what that has turned into is a revolving door of people coming in, working those 90 days, quitting, going to a different agency, working another 90 days as a caregiver. I mean, I've seen caregivers work for 5 different agencies for 90 days at a time. And
Well,
why that's not specific to the person is beyond me, but that's the game that they play. And it's really frustrating for the clients when that happens, because every 90 days they're having to get to know somebody new, and
right.
bringing somebody else into their home and starting over, as far as, this is how I like my towels to be folded, and
Right.
please keep the back door closed so the cat doesn't get out, or whatever it is. There's always a nuance to every situation. And so starting over again with a brand new caregiver can be really frustrating. So finding an agency that has that more consistent staff pool can be really nice for the families and the clients that are receiving the services.
Well, I just want to say, and you didn't ask me to say this, but I'll say this because this is the impression I get from you. If you are someone that is looking to or considering buying a franchise within home care for you, I can tell you based on my short time of getting to know Joleen, you're not going to find a more passionate franchisor who's going to work as hard for you as she does, who is going to be constantly working at making better systems and taking your ideas and if there's legitimacy to them, if they'll help and they can be worked into the system, I feel like she's someone that's going to listen with wide open ears, and that you'll never feel uncomfortable coming there and say, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And I think that's very important for the type of business that they will be doing with in-home care for you, because like we just talked about, like you said in your on your website here, the silver tsunami is here, the senior boom. And so I don't think we can have enough qualified caregivers out there for 100 years based on how many seniors we have in this country.
Yeah, we really can't. And we're here with you live on those Zooms. We're not automated, we're not AI, but I think that automation and AI has a huge role to play, because it can take so much of the burden off of you as far as systemizing things and making sure that your operations are happening smoothly without you constantly having to, when we first started, if a caregiver had to call off, they were calling me. And they were like, I have a flat tire, my kid is throwing up, whatever it was, they were calling me. And then I'm like, okay. I know this person really needs somebody to come over because, if they don't have a caregiver, like we're there to help them get up and go to the bathroom. Like somebody has to be there. We can't call off on this person. And so it really is almost like an emergency, and so many other jobs, it's like, well, we're short a waitress. Guess we'll close those sections down and everybody's going to have to wait a little bit longer for their burger. That's not what our industry is. It's
We can't do
really
that.
important. So my job got so much easier when we found and started using systems where our caregivers can say, I need to make my shift available. And it doesn't matter why. They could be sick, they could be going on vacation, and it will automatically send out a notification to any caregiver that is qualified and eligible to work with that client without me having to do anything. It sends that notification out. We also have a sub list so that if somebody's not seeing their notifications, those caregivers can call through that sub list. But having a system like that is so powerful. And then when that caregiver applies for the shift, boom, the scheduling software just moves it on over and places that person there. And that takes such a load off the schedule, whether it's the scheduling manager or the owner, it takes such a load off. So there is definitely a place for automation. And I love what you said earlier when you were talking about me being open to ideas and open to change. I can't remember when we talked the first time if I told you this story or not, but I had spoken with a manager of mine years ago, and she started getting frustrated with how many changes we were making. And she's like, well, what's wrong with how we're doing it? And
Right.
I told her, I said, there's only one thing I can promise you isn't going to change with our company. And she kind of gives me this look like, all right, okay, what is it? I said, the only thing that's not going to change is our willingness to change if that change is for the better and that change makes sense for the company. And that is so key to business because I just did a talk on this, just a couple of weeks ago. We posted something on our YouTube channel where places like, let's see, Blockbuster, Netflix started mailing me DVDs in the mail. I would get, and I would sit there and I would like get a catalog and I would circle which movies I wanted and I would check the thing and I'd put it in the mail and I'd mail it out and they would mail me DVDs. And that was stage one of Netflix being more convenient for me than Blockbuster was. And I loved Blockbuster. I used to go there all the time.
Yeah.
And then I switched to Netflix because I could just do it from my house. And every once in a while, I'd go back to Blockbuster just because it was fun to walk down the aisles with the kids and, pick out a bag of popcorn and a VHS tape. But for the most part, I was ordering DVDs from Netflix. And then when things went to streaming, Blockbuster disappeared. I don't know the date that it happened.
Yeah. Hey, Redbox went out of business. I mean, my God, and what you're talking about AI though, I'm like this. I like the Bible teaches, be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. I know there's a lot of bad parts to AI, but there's some really good parts to it, just like what you were saying. And for me, I'll give an example and this just a fun little side note. But so my bank that I bank with, the Southeast Bank here in Southeast Tennessee. And they're the only bank I've ever seen where you can actually edit your online transactions like a check register. It's absolutely phenomenal. So because I'm a single person with 3 different businesses, I can go in there and edit all my transactions. I can export that into a CSV file, upload that into ChatGPT, and it will break it down for me in just a matter of seconds. And then I can use ChatGPT to go to freetaxusa.com and walk me through the filing process and give me the exact numbers to put in every single box. And that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And let me just say this. Yeah, let me just say this. If you really want to have some fun with it, let's say that you're listening to this podcast. Okay. And again, the company is InHomeCare4U, the number 4, the letter U.com. You can go to ChatGPT and you can say, give me an analysis of how in-home care for you franchise, if it would be a good idea for my area, my city, state, and it will blow you away. It will come back with the demographics. I mean, it'll tell you all the reasons why. It is super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool. And so we do not want to shy away from that. In fact, one of the things that you and I talked about earlier, and this will be a conversation for an entirely different podcast, I'm sure, but our Ask Leora app that I created is something that our franchisees will get to use. And the developers are working on it this week. They're like, we have, it's in the works, it's in the bag. So we should have that launched by this fall. So very soon our franchisees will be able to take advantage of that application. And as whether it's something that we're creating ourselves or it's something that we stumble upon that's just really amazing, I think innovation needs to be just constantly part of what you're doing and constantly making those tweaks and changes and things like that so that you have a car and it works great, but you want to change those tires and you want to keep doing maintenance and you want to be continually making improvements to it, because if you have a car and you just neglect it and you never put any gas in it, and it's just not gonna work.
Yeah, it's gonna wear out pretty quick. And you're right. Well, Joleen, this has been awesome. I knew we talked first time would be a fun podcast. We're going to wrap it up here, but let me just reiterate here that we're talking with Joleen Tietz, and the company is InHomeCare4U. That's InHomeCare, the number 4, the letter U.com. And on the top of that website, if you're looking at on mobile, just click the 3 little dashes on the menu. You'll find the franchise information link. And this is a phenomenal franchise because it allows you to work using your home as your base of operations if you choose to. The all-in investment is under $50,000. And as you just heard Joleen and I talking about, systems upon systems to make your life as simple as possible so you can focus on the caregiving and not worry about, oh my God, how do I fill out this form? How do I do that? How do I do this? I've got this HR question. They've got everything covered for you. And so, Joleen, if they want more information, do you want to give them your direct contact information? You want them to fill out a form on the website? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The form on the website is the best way to introduce yourself to us because there's just a little survey there. It'll help us get a good idea for you, and then we can get you onto our calendar and we can just do a discovery call with you and take you through slides so that you can understand, and then we can have a real-time question and answer session together. So that form right now is the very best way to get in touch with us. It's on that franchise website. It just says, click here you're not applying for a franchise. It's not awarding anything on the spot, but you're just click here to apply to learn more. And so when you apply to learn more, you'll hop on a podcast with either myself or someone on our executive team, and we'll be able to walk you through the process.
Very good. And if you are interested in this franchise, you can also contact me directly, Todd Abraham, 423-405-4040, and I can get you all the information that you need and also set up this discovery call between you and Joleen and her team. Listen, you're tuning into the Franchise Flashlight podcast series on franchiseradio.net. You can click to follow us. We're available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Deezer, Podbean. There's about 12 to 15 different podcast networks where we go, and you of course can always listen to the podcast on our Franchise Flashlight podcast series on franchiseradio.net. Joleen, any final words before we wrap it up here?
Todd, I just want to thank you for having me on. It's been so fun talking to you. I feel like you're a kindred spirit. I know I got to learn so much about you and your franchise with your magazine that you have, and that was just so exciting. And I'm just excited to see what God does for your franchise, for my franchise. And the services that we're offering people are needed. This is not gosh, I don't want to put anybody's business model down, so I want to be too careful with that, what I say, but this isn't something that is frivolous that people want. It
Right.
is something that is needed. And when you are in business to service needs, your sales job gets a whole lot easier. And
Yeah.
so I'd say for anyone who's kind of on the fence thinking, oh, I don't know if I could actually do this. I'm not really a salesperson. I don't know if owning the business is something I could do. If you jump on a call with us, we can walk you through what that's going to look like, and you'll have a lot more information. We're not here to pressure anybody into anything. We really are looking for people that are aligned with it. And if that's not you, that's okay. But if you think that it might be, and you think that you have the heart for it, or it's been something that's been on your mind for a while, but you just don't know where to start, you don't have to start from scratch. We've already got the roadmaps ready, so it doesn't hurt to learn more. And I think that's what I would leave people with.
Well, and I'll throw in one last thing. If it's somebody that is right, who truly genuinely cares about people, they don't have to be a salesperson, because the person that's interviewing them to take care of one of their loved ones, that's what they're going to be looking for. They're not looking for a salesperson. They're looking for somebody they can sense that compassion, somebody feel like this they're going to care for their loved one like they would care for their loved one. So you really don't have to be a good salesperson to be successful within home care for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Todd. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Absolutely. And listen, folks, follow our page on Facebook, Franchise Radio. It's the Franchise Radio is the extension on Facebook. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Todd. So